It's that time of the week again where we answer the questions that you ask down in the comments. It's Ask GCN Anything. Number 20, I think, Matt.
I think it is number 20. Last week was 19. This week is number 20. And first up, we're straight in
with Steve Potts on Twitter. And Steve asks, how to ride better in the heat/humidity? It's 35 degrees every day in HK at the moment. How does he go about it? Hydration and something else?
Well, I take it firstly, Steve, by HK you mean Hong Kong, and it is pretty humid there, but it's getting gradually warmer across the world, apart from in the southern hemisphere, of course, in Australia, even here in the gloomy UK. So it's quite a pertinent question, but hydration and keeping cool in hot conditions is really important if you're going to get the best out of your bike riding. So first off, make sure you've got enough fluids on board before the ride is very, very important. So check your pee, make sure it's not too yellowy, so you've got nice clear pee, and then top up your fluids throughout the ride. And rather than just using water on particularly hot conditions, use an isotonic or carbohydrate sort of blend as well.
Good advice. We actually have a video about riding in the heat and humidity. Check it out.
Top tips.
Yeah, remember that more than 50% of your body is made up of water, so it's really important that you keep that level maintained. Make sure you're hydrated before you even head out, and then take plenty of fluids out with you. You really want 2 big bottles, 750 mils, and ideally you want to favour electrolyte drinks over water, as they'll do a much better job of keeping you hydrated.
Next up, we've got this question from James Polly, who got involved in the comments below using the hashtag talkback, and he said, is it always climbers who will go on to become GC contenders, or is that just the nature of Grand Tour route design? Well, it's a particularly timely question, James, because we're just a few days into the Tour de France. And it's a tough one to say. Generally, to be good and to win a Grand Tour, you must be an excellent climber, although not necessarily a pure climber. You also need to be strong enough to hold your own in things like time trials and in really stressful race scenarios. So think things like descents on the pavé or the cobbles in northern France and in crosswind sections. So yeah, you need to be a very good climber, but also a very good all-rounder.
Yeah, really well put, Tom. I think it's about being as complete a rider as possible, but you can't not take into account, as you touched upon, the design of the course from year to year. It might suit one rider one year and one rider another. So take, for example, the amount of mountaintop finishes could suit a rider who climbs a bit better, or in another year there could be a particularly large amount, or a lot of kilometres in terms of time trialling as well, which again could suit a rider with different sorts of attributes. So definitely course design and being a complete all-rounder are the main key factors. And we in fact have a video on how you exactly win the Tour de France. And you can find that just here.
Things get slightly more complicated for a team time trial because the team is allocated the time of the 5th rider across the line. So that's why the teams will make sure that they cross the line together with at least 5 at the front.
It's time now for the rapid fire round.
First up, Matt, we've got this one from Ben Fino Radin, who says, at GCN Suite, got in touch on Twitter, do you guys still race?
Do you race?
I don't race anymore, Ben, but I do really enjoy watching bike races.
I'm the same as you. Don't race. I'm glad it's out of my system, but I still love watching racing. Lloydie, we don't think he races, or he doesn't tell us if he does, but we do know one man that does, and that's the only one left we haven't talked about. Simon, he loves a race still, doesn't he?
Simon is still on incredible form, isn't
Bit of cheeky cyclocross, he loves it, absolutely loves it. Next up is this from Andy Hall. Again, he got in touch on Twitter using the hashtag talkback. What's the best rings to leave your bike in between rides? Small ring and small ring? I'm a bit old school, so I'll pick this one up first. My dad told me to leave my bike in the small ring, so the little ring, and then the smaller sprocket, or the 11 or the 12 or the 13. So the cables didn't stretch and it kept a little bit less pressure off the springs. But it's not quite the same these days with modern bikes, although perhaps it's a best practice.
Oh yeah, I thought about this, Matt. I'd never actually thought about the subject before, but it does make sense, doesn't it? Even if you're on electronic shifting, if you are on your small chainring and your smallest gear at the back, there's going to be the least pressure possible, the least stretch possible on the chain, although it's only a minor factor, and also your rear mech spring and your front mech spring are going to be, the springs relax, is that the right word? But
yeah,
that's what
they're not under tension, I guess, I suppose, isn't it? They're not tension. So it makes me feel better in my mind that my bike's relaxed as well as me. Next up we have this from Ty Bradley.
At GCN Suite, another person who got in touch on Twitter, I'm a 14-year-old cyclist. Do you have any specific tips and lengths of training rides that you recommend for people my age?
That's a good question. I actually didn't start racing till I was 16, but as a 14-year-old, I just had fun riding my bike. So I think don't worry about riding really long distances, although you can if you want, but keep it short. But try, we talked about this earlier on, you said build up your skills. I think it's a really good point.
Yeah, I think I started racing when I was maybe 12, and of the kids who were racing then who went on to become pro and are good pros, I remember that although they rode their bike a lot, I don't think they were ever training as such as, you know, you might think about it now when you're slightly older. They loved riding their bike, so they rode it a lot. They were never pressured to go out training, and they were highly skillful. You know, they could wheelie, they could bunny hop. So just, yeah, get out, have fun, work on your skills. If you don't have a mountain bike or you can't get hold of a mountain bike, see if there's a kids group that can train off-roads, because, I mean, you don't really want to practice your skills on the open road.
Not necessarily, or you could, another tip if you've got the facility nearby is to ride on the track, to get used to riding without brakes and riding, you know, relatively safely in close proximity to other riders, which is one of the key skills, of course, of ultimately racing.
And I'd say try another sport as well. Don't be afraid of just, you know,
Mix it up a bit.
Yeah, mix it up a bit. Keep things fresh.
And this one is from Jordan Stebbins. How come my questions haven't been on the show?
DanX7799 says, what max speed have the GCN presenters reached?
Well, we've done some research on this one. Dan, I don't know whether to believe him or not, because I haven't seen the stats officially, but he claims 117 kilometres an hour, or 72.7 miles an hour, which is in the lead.
Matt claims 109 kilometres an hour, or 67.7 miles an hour. Simon, that's surprising.
Yeah, Simon claims 90 kilometres an hour, or 55 miles an hour, which is okay, but not as punchy as Dan's, which is questionable to say the least. And what about yours?
Maybe Dan's was recorded when his bike was on the roof of the car with the Garmin still switched on, possibly. Yeah. Mine is 110 kilometres an hour, Matt.
Which is 68.3 miles an hour, which actually puts you into second place. But I remember now, I think mine's actually 111 kilometres an hour. Yeah, 111 kilometres an hour.
All right, so yeah, you're 0.6 of a mile an hour faster than me, at your fastest. Ever.
Put your fastest speeds down here, but stay safe. Don't go fast on purpose, if you know what I mean. But we'll be interested to know how fast your
What I
bike's
would
going.
emphasise is that all of these speeds were set on enclosed road situations.
Right, time to ease off now, Lasty, and just gear down a little bit for this question from Scott Armour, also on Twitter. Now, Scott has asked, a question regarding gels. I always use caffeine gels and caffeine drinks. Am I doing it wrong? Well, unless we know any more specific detail, you're not necessarily doing it wrong unless you are exclusively using just caffeine gels and only having caffeine drinks. We wouldn't really advise that. Caffeine, I think, I've no doubt Lasty would agree, definitely got a place, but I would tend to use it, or tended to use it in a race scenario or in a sportive or on a particularly long ride near the back end. And lots of riders will save an energy gel containing caffeine to the last kind of 20 kilometres just to give them that little bit of a boost in terms of mental alertness and just trying to combat that little bit of fatigue. But exclusively having caffeine gels wouldn't do too much good to your gut, really. I wouldn't have thought, would it?
I wouldn't have thought so, but gels are a really good way to fuel when you're cycling. And this video tells you how to make energy gels work for you when you're training and racing. Check it out.
I think the first thing that we need to understand is exactly what is contained within our gels. So we mentioned just now that they are in essence water and carbohydrates. However, the type of carbohydrates can change, as can the amount of carbs and also the amount of water. And it's these three things that we need to take into consideration when we're deciding how and when to use our gels.
Now, to wrap things up, we have this from Martin Visser, who says the myth goes round that training must hurt or exhaust you in order to be good training. Is this true? Or is just spending hours on your bike at a reasonable speed a good way to improve? Well, what do you reckon, Lassie?
Yeah, I'd say it's not a myth at all, Martin. I think to make improvements, you have to push your body to its limits, or even slightly beyond in some cases, to allow your muscles to recover, super compensate, and then, you know, reach higher limits and higher. I think the myth of no pain, no gain is that every session should be no pain, no gain, but certainly you do need to be in pain on several training sessions.
I don't think there's there aren't any shortcuts in terms of any sport if you're looking to build strength primarily and endurance. Steady miles, I think, do have their place, especially in terms of recovery, and also just for a bit of a break. If you just ride into a cafe with your mates, there's nothing wrong with spinning your legs. But if you want to get fitter, if you want to get stronger, it's going to hurt. Now, we do have a video about benchmarking or finding your current level of fitness and then making improvements and monitoring that along the way. So check this out.
There are three main tests which are going to give you a broad picture of your cycling ability. A sprint test, a maximal aerobic test, and a threshold test. Now, these three things are going to tell you a lot about your overall cycling performance out on the open road, and improving any one of them will make you a better rider.
Well, that's it for another week. Thanks as ever for all your questions.
Yeah, thanks guys. Last week, or at the point of filming this video, we have 232 comments underneath Ask GCN. I think we can beat that. Let's see if we can get to 300, and we might answer even more questions in the next episode. Anyway, don't forget, keep them coming in the comments and on Facebook and Twitter using the hashtag #TalkBack, which is going to be on screen now.
It certainly is. Now, as we're kind of part-way through the Tour de France, how about, if you like the Tour de France, or even if you don't, you fancy taking a look, checking out our Tour de France playlist. There's loads of cool videos on there all about the Tour, filmed at the Tour as well.
For another really cool video, Simon went to a wind tunnel to find out how Envy and Team Dimension data test for aerodynamics. It's worth checking out. Click down there to watch it.
It is really cool. And to subscribe to GCN, as ever, click on the globe. And don't forget to share and like this video too.
There's a link to our shop to Matt's right.